Yeah, that really caused a lot of stuff with Tecumseh guys. I don't know, he's made another fake account and admitted it. The other thing is that is a rover. I mean, we have looked and looked and looked, and I compared it to another photo. It's twin photo. Yeah, that's a rover there. That's not a strut down at the bottom because the struts don't go that low. They're only this high. This is right at the bottom of the pad, and you can see the tires. The other two are broken right off of the thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all the stuff is still hanging there. You know when Scott shows all those ropes and crap hanging off of there? Well, you can see it right there. That triangle thing that's hanging with those ropes dangling on there. And these guys are still saying it's a strut. Well, there's no strut down there.
No, there isn't.
The struts are broken right off.
Yeah, they're broken clean off.
Yeah, it's extraordinary looking at it. There doesn't appear to be any space within that quadrant where the rover could be stored. It looks full. It looks as though it's got stuff in it.
Well, the actual quadrant where the rover is stored, where the legs come out, that's where the fuel tanks are.
Yeah.
So the wedge quadrant, that's quadrant 1 on that side where the rover wedges into, you actually don't see it in that photograph. It's not visible. However, people are saying, oh, well, we've watched videos of the rover being deployed. Well, one of them is an hour and 20 minutes long. Take the rover down, and the other document says it's about 20 minutes to bring the rover down, and that includes loading all of the equipment on it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And then if you look at the video of the rover being deployed, it's in the shade, the one that they show.
Yeah, but they forgot. See, this is what this guy said, and I says, yeah, the reason why that rover's laying there and all broken is because they forgot to clean it up. That's why it's still there.
Exactly. It's interesting there are no film. There's no evidence of them actually creating the rover, putting all the equipment onto it, which would take a while.
But when it opens up, they have to mechanically hook up the steering. Then they have to put the camera mounts in and mount the camera. Then the antenna mount and mount the camera, and make all of those little wire connections on there with those gloves on. Then they have to go to the back and they have to mount the equipment rack in behind the thing and add all of that equipment to the thing. Now, people are also saying, oh, there was no damage to the rover. Well, I sent Robert a link on showing all of the equipment damage for Apollo 15. And Stone at the BIS did the entire documentation on Apollo 15, showing all of the official damage that was created. Like, he's very good at the details of the official documentation of the rover when he did that presentation. And he showed that the seats were damaged, the fenders were damaged, that only one battery was operating. So they only had power to 2 wheels, not 4, and that the steering was damaged. And then, of course, in his documentation, when he did his presentation, he said they parked it in the shade overnight and magically it was repaired.
Well, how can it magically be repaired when that rover, this particular rover on Apollo 15, it has 2 broken wheels on it. It has all the mounts laying down on the bottom of the ground. And top of that, it has all the straps that are still dangling there. And I don't know how many times we've shown that. It's broken. It is broken. There's 3 photos of that, plus this one here. So they forgot to pick that rover up because there's tracks all over the place. And by the way, some of those tracks don't match either. They're really wonky. So how many rovers are there out there? I don't know.
There's quite a lot of them. They were parked up on Cinder Lake, weren't they?
Yeah.
To do it.
That one particular photograph, because the American flag is deployed, so that photograph is taken after the end of the second EVA. That when it was deployed there. But like I said, when you look at the one they put up, I don't know how many times they probably filmed it when they were practicing unloading it, but the rover's in the shade. And of course it can't be, it has to be in the sunlight.
The only shade it could be in is the shadow from the lander itself.
Right. And the shadow of the lander is always on every one of the missions is over the ladder.
Yeah, because they had to see where they were going, so they came in with the sun behind them.
Well, I guess that makes sense.
But the other thing is with this fella here, he's saying That is the strut. And I've been on there trying to reason with him, saying that it's not the strut. I says, if you want to go with the strut, I'll go halfway with you and meet you halfway, and I'll say that's the strut that broke off of the other side, that's all dangling down, and that's laying across there. And the Rover's still on the other side because you can see it with the broken tires and everything else there.
You can see the round rims.
You could see the round rims. You could see the little pegs that go up when it folds to hold it in place. You could see it all. It's all there.
It was a political event, Apollo. It wasn't anything to do with science. It wasn't anything to do with exploration, because it never went anywhere. They just stayed here.
That's the problem, because what's going to happen is, now that they try to do things the right way, if they follow the plan of Apollo, they're going to get somebody killed.
Yes.
Because they were never there.
No, they were never there. They'd never been to the moon, so they didn't know the conditions. There's a report in the current issue of Spaceflight, got that this morning. Was it Starship in Space? It was all about Musk and what he's doing. But they're also looking at some of the new research, and they're saying they've been using the Glenn Research Center. Now, that's the vacuum chamber. I would imagine. They're saying they're using vibration testing, they're using heat testing, but they don't mention vacuum very much. But obviously the vacuum was what the Glenn Research Center was built for, but nobody's used it. Now they're beginning to find out that vacuum has a major impact.
We found a document on the windows alone. I have the other original windows for the LEM, with them showing that the triangular windows only had one seal on them and the other was a micrometer thing on the outside. This is a completely different document.
Oh, by the way, talking of that, have you seen the latest one from Phase 52012? Takes aim at each of us individually. It was sent to me by somebody who said, what do you think of this? And I said, not a lot. Standard reply. It was posted about 2 or 3 days ago.
He's got 2 more up already. He put one up yesterday, he put one up today, and he put one up. He's been going every day. It's called
A Log Entry, Critique of Apollo, featuring Marcus Allen, Scott Henderson, and Robert Williams.
He sure doesn't like us very much at all.
Doesn't like us at all.
And he went after Stray Dog, too. He made a video especially for Stray Dog.
He's got a lot of time on his hands, hasn't he?
Except he won't use his face.
I mean, we use our face. Look, here it is. And the names on the channel, we use our real names, we use our real faces. But these guys don't. What's so difficult about using your real name, guys? Come on, can't be that difficult. Put it up there. Let's hear what you've got to say, but do it for real. Otherwise, you're just considered to be part of the clowns in America.
Well, there's the first part about a hoax. That teacher, he's talking to his grade 6 students on how to source out what's real and what's fake. And he said the first thing you have to do is stop and find the source of the material that's being accessed. And he's talking about, in particular, the moon hoax. Well, if he looks at our material, our source is NASA. We use NASA documents. We use dispute between their documents, how they've updated them to cover up all of the errors that they've made. And then we have professionals to analyze the photographs, the documents, and we have PhD guys that can sit out there and tell us all about vacuum. The reasoning he gives why not to look at our material, he needs to use his own reasoning so that he can look at our material, because it's going to direct it directly to us.
I mean, that's what you've always done, isn't it, Scott? You've always used NASA's own material. You've drawn conclusions from it. The basic material comes from NASA, from their website.
Well, the conclusions are self-evident.
Well, yeah, obviously. That's what's called logical thinking.
Well, yeah, and when NASA has to keep updating and updating and updating to cover all of the errors that they've made. Well, what it is the window itself that they have designed, between the 2 layers, it has multiple layers of seals. And then between the glass, there are sensors, pressure sensors. So when the glass is being squished in and out between the 2 layers, it will sound an alarm before it breaks. Now, that particular window is only seen in this documentation. It's never in any of the photographs. But when you go back and look at the 1962 3 and 4 versions of the Houston vacuum chambers, the one where the window was actually blown out when they were putting it in the chamber, the hull actually cracked. So then they put two-way valves in it, pressure relief valves. If the pressure differential was too great, when they're pulling the vacuum down, it would let pressure out of the machine. And when they were putting atmosphere back into the chamber before they released it, the two-way valves would allow the air to go back into the vehicle as it's being pressurized to stop the differential. Well, these windows have little sensors in them. As the windows move in and out, it has a little sensor in there to show the pressure. And it actually showed the pressure side of the glass. Well, if it's only 5 psi, like everybody said, why would they need to do that if the differential is only 5 psi? But apparently the vacuum that they were working with actually has more pressure.
Yeah, it would.
Because a glass window would be able to handle that 5 psi.
Yeah, quite easily.
But when they have to put sensors on it, when they actually have damage to it when they're pulling the vacuum down, that the windows actually blow out, that it cracks the hull. And that's in that earliest documentation of them. And we've shown that many times before.
If the windows are in a vacuum, as exists on the lunar surface, it's not going to be forced inwards, it's going to be forced outwards.
That's right.
Because there's pressure in the gap between the glass, which is going to expand the glass considerably if they don't release it. But if they release the pressure within the windows, between the glass, what's the point of having it there in the first place? It's not doing anything.
The pressure sensor is the glass between the two layers is squeezing in and out with the different pressure, like from the inside out. And when the pressure gets that great that the inside glass is being deformed that much, it pushes a little sensor and puts an alarm out for them not to pull it down any farther. But you do not see that in the final version of any of the windows. Like this thing sits in on the glass with a big aluminum arm coming out to it with an electrical switch. You don't see that in any of the mock-up models that they've made, that they've photographed.
They weren't on the moon.
Right.
They were testing it here on Earth.
And the one thing, I did send you the link to Brian Cox at the Sandusky vacuum chamber, right?
Yeah, right.
At the Glenn Research Center, when they drop a ball and a feather. Now, there's nothing wrong with the fact that because there's no atmosphere, that they're going to fall at the same time. But when you look at that video of him in there, he's inside the chamber, they set up the test, he comes out, they go up to the control room, and then you see the guys in the control room, and he's going to put his finger on the button, and they're all sitting there looking at the monitors. Well, guess what? Between the time he puts his finger up to that button and when the ball and the feather is going to drop, it takes 23 hours to bring that vacuum down. Costs $40,000 in hydro to be able to do that. He pushes the button and it falls. So that means that those guys were sitting there, standing, look at those monitors for 23 hours till the vacuum came down. Then they have to repressurize it, open the door, and Brian Cox walks in where the test was being done back in there. All of those people have been there for more than a day for that test to occur, yet they're still wearing the same clothing. So, did they actually pull it down to do the tests? I mean, our technology, it's much easier to, just insert them falling down in there. That's easy enough to fake. It's not the fact that it wouldn't happen. They are going to fall at the same speed if they're in a vacuum, but would, while they were filming it, actually take the time to bring that chamber down just for Brian Cox? And why would he be standing in the same clothing? Not likely.
I thought it was longer than 23 hours to create the vacuum in the chamber.
It depends on what they're testing. They have,
24
when
hours.
they put materials in, they have off-gassing of materials, which makes it last a hell of a lot longer as they pull it down, because it's just off-gassing materials all the time.
And that's causing a lot of condensation.
And then on top of that, before they even prepare it, they have to turn this thing on for a few days to bake it out. Now, if Brian Cox is in the chamber bringing materials in, they're going to have to prepare that chamber after he steps out. We're not saying that the feather in the ball wouldn't fall at the same speed. We're just saying that it's so much easier to fake that particular thing because the man is still standing in the same clothing. Like he walked into the chamber, walked back out again, and okay, well, we'll make it fall.
Okay, you want to talk about the Sandusky chamber? This is what it says. At the SPF, the first stage has 4 pumps arranged in parallel and connected to the vacuum chamber through a 1.2 meter diameter pipe. This stage evacuates the chamber from atmospheric pressure to 600 millibar in about 20 minutes. And then if you want to take it down further, then another stage is opened up and it reduces the pressure to 90 millibar in a further 20 minutes. After around 70 minutes, the chamber vacuum level is reduced to 3 times 10 to the minus 5 millibar by 10 helium cryopumps. The vacuum level is reduced to less than 10 to the minus 7 millibar in an additional 3 to 10 hours.
So it takes a while to do it.
Yes. So they're saying that the rotary piston pumps use a piston to expand and compress the gas, similar to an air compressor. The 5th stage then exhausts to atmosphere, and then the helium cryopumps fire up and freeze the air inside the vacuum chamber and then collecting it on the cold surfaces of the pumps, which are at a temperature of 15 K. So it's quite interesting. And by the way, it says this type of pump can only operate under vacuum conditions.
The 15 K is an interesting temperature as well. That's what, 30 centigrade, something like that? That's Kelvin. So you've got minus 273 is absolute zero.
But that's crazy. 10 helium cryopumps.
That's quite a lot. Takes a while.
3 to 10 hours to get it down to 10 to the minus 7 millibar. And it's funny how phase 52012 states that, oh, the photo that we showed is from a pan. So he gets all the pictures and he gets them all up there and he shows the whole pan as it's going across. And sure enough, there it is. You know, there's the LEM with the broken rover laying down there. And then he keeps going and he keeps going. Oh, wait a minute. There's a rover there and there's tracks all over the place. And look, all the equipment is set up. So if the rover's here, how can it be broken and sitting over there? Well, doesn't he understand that it's broken? They forgot to pick the darn thing up before they reshot. That's what he doesn't get. But that's what happens when you're a member of the NASA's cult, because you can't think for yourself.
I put one document up on the Windows. If you're looking at the PDF file, it's page 16, or if you're looking at the Adobe out of 24 pages, it's pages 21 out of 24.
Window heater electrical connection. Okay, let's have a look.
These electrical contacts in there, got a copper coil and a spring on it to have this and electrical, and there's also a venting thing built in to protect the windows in between the 2 layers as well. But if it was only 5 psi, 2 panes of glass would be able to hold that back no problem.
Yeah, of course it would.
This document shows exactly what you need to go in, like when you're going through them, the different pages. Where they start showing it is the actual page 9, which is shown at the right, or page 14 in the document. And it shows the different layers, and it shows the vents, it shows everything else. And it shows which side the pressure is on between the 2 layers of glass. But like as you scroll down through there, then they show these connections on there to these sensors that are built in on these little tabs. And I can see that when they're testing. They put this thing in a vacuum chamber, and all of a sudden you have a major blowout. Like even talking to Bill Demos, he didn't want to put the space pen to explode inside his equipment because it would damage the equipment. If you're pulling a vacuum down with those machines when you get down to that level, if you suddenly have an input of air into that vacuum chamber, you're going to do a lot of damage to that equipment, especially if you had something the size of a LEM, right? And all of a sudden it's exhausting the atmosphere into the chamber when those turbo pumps are trying to pull it down, take the fins right off of it. But anyway, you don't see this design of this window framing or anything else in any of the models of the LEM. And it even shows that it had heater connectors. The triangular windows only had 1 seal on it, not 2. The other part of the window is just a micrometeor shielding on it. I mean, they went to a lot of work.
Oh, yeah, they did. Well, they obviously knew there was going to be a problem, so they had to work out what to do about it.
I'm on page 11, and it said the maximum pane was capable of 30,000 psi. And it says the stress level experienced during thermal shock was approximately 20,000 psi. Well, where are they getting this 20,000 psi from if vacuum doesn't have a force?
Exactly.
But the vacuum has a force with respect to the atmosphere.
Yes, one is within the other and then times the surface area, right?
This document's July 1973.
Yeah.
So this is all after the Apollo landing.
All after.
Yeah.
And they were trying to design these seals and the window glass to withstand that much on there. And that's why they had those sensors in there. If that glass starts to bend too far, it's going to put an alarm off. And they would need to have that inside of a vacuum chamber because they could have quite the explosion. It's a hell of a lot of force. You got to transfer that amount of force into the surface area of the chamber itself. And that's why Sandusky little chambers, the walls are 10 feet thick. People just don't understand that. It's only holding back one atmosphere. 14.7 psi is all that chamber's holding back. And the walls have to be 10 feet thick.
Well, why don't they just put an Apollo-era spacesuit in there and we would be done with all of this because it would explode and we could all go home?
They should be practicing daily in there if there's only a difference of 14.7 psi. They put an airlock on the Sandusky chamber and all the astronauts can go in there and practice every day. 25, 30 of them in there. And that way they don't have to pull it down all the time. They don't have to open up that big door. That's only for the big equipment. Just put an airlock in and then people go in and the vacuum chamber is down at that level all the time.
But this is what gets me too. Think about it. We looked at all of the wires, cables that are coming out of the side of that wall. So the side of the wall has a panel. It has a hole in it where all the cables for the power are coming through to light all those lights that they have sitting in there. So that means that all those cables would have to be sealed off. The cable themselves with the wires inside of them have to be sealed off. All of that has to be sealed off. And you're telling me that, and all of that has to be good to 10 to the minus 6. So they have all this sealed off. They have wires that are going through, and yet they had to build it into a dome because it's going to collapse. Well, what about the wall? You've just created a breach in that wall, having the cables go through it.
Well, how do you think the wires went through the CSM to go out to the antennas? Same problem, right?
Oh, it only cost you $2.75. Oh, no. Foreign, $5.25. Wow.
What, for that document?
Yeah.
The one I just got for free?
Yeah, September 1973. I mean, come on, guys. You know, why are you telling us reports about spacecraft structural windows, which were allegedly on the moon, 4 years before your report came out? What's going on?
Yeah, and that's just testing of the windows.
Yeah, that's just testing. September 73. It's all to do with the lunar module. It's nothing to do with the Apollo-Soyuz link-up. That's not mentioned. Command module windows, lunar module windows.
I went back, I found a document for the Apollo 6 on the Windows. And when I hit the link for the PDF file on it, it just said page not found.
Well, that's a surprise.
Yeah.
Lunar module window test results. This is 1973. Come on. You think we haven't noticed?
Well, they're probably still working on those windows today.
Well, if they go on these reports, they're not going to get very far, are they? They're going to find they've failed.
Well, today's glass has come an awful long way.
Oh, yeah, the glass.
We've got bulletproof glass. We've got very superior, the laminations that they've been able to put into glass is just something else. However, you can see through it, the radiation's going to come.
Yeah, of course it is.
They're going to have to do what they do with microwave ovens and just put that coating in there to make sure it doesn't reflect and come out the door.
Pretty crazy when you start looking at some of the documentation. I mean, they seriously, when they were designing those windows, they seriously were attempting to create something that would work.
I am sure they were. Yeah.
But when you look at the photographs of the windows that are installed in that mock-up, those things are nowhere near what these windows are. Look at the number of layers on there to seal those windows off, just to seal them off in those diagrams, right? That's not in any of those windows. Never mind the fact that the paint is peeling off on the one window and the water is running down on the inside of it. I mean, you leave something out in the rain and it leaks. You got to put a plastic rain guard on it, and then that gets damaged, and then the window's got water running down it. And then, of course, you see that on all those diagrams, they have a venting system so that the pressure is never exceeded on the window, right? And that would be done for testing inside a chamber.
Well, this is interesting on the LEM window here, because how thin is the framing around that window?
On any of the photographs,
Yeah.
there are 2 layers there. There's probably a half an inch between the windows. The windows are less than a quarter of an inch. They look about the same as what you would find on an aircraft. Matter of fact, some of them look like they came right out of an aircraft.
Yeah.
Probably did.
Well, look at on the jet fighters that they had. They had those nice little triangular windows on them.
Oh, yeah, on the side of the cockpits there, yeah.
Yeah. And then you have the other ones that are sitting in there that are nicely rounded off. Those are your nice airplane for your DC-10 or whatever they probably came out of at the time. Yeah, the fighter plane, the triangular windows in there, that's exactly where they got those 2 from. You don't think they're actually going to go out and make one just for this machine, do you?
Oh, sure, they have to, though, because they have to spend another $1 million per window.
Well, they probably used the same windows they used on the SR-71, the Blackbird. They
Yep.
were triangular, the front ones.
Yeah, and those would be the highest tech windows that they had. And they were strong. Nothing windows on an aircraft that they aren't strong windows. But by today's standard, we're way beyond that.
Oh, this is interesting. And I found a video of them doing lunar ranging, and you should see the nice return they're getting.
Oh, the light that shines when you can't see it?
Yeah, that one. It's really interesting how the one that they're using, this is somewhere around 1965-6 in there, in that area there. Now, when they're using this and they're firing that laser, you don't see any beam going up towards anywhere. You just see it flash. That's it. That's all you see. Now, when you look at the ones that were done in the 90s, where the Mythbusters did it, or was it 2000, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's all nice and green. Well, your eye's not going to see that, but the camera will. And that's what we're looking through the camera. So interesting that we don't see any beam going up there when they're doing it in the 60s, but now we see it. I just thought that was just strange,
It just reminds me of the Big Bang Theory when they fire a laser at the moon and they have a guy that's a little bit simple there and he says, "You're going to fire a laser at the moon? Aren't you afraid you're going to blow it up?" Then he said, "No, we set the laser to stun."
That'll work.
And then he hands him the glasses so you can see the beam and he says, "Oh, it's in 3D.
Oh.
If the laser reflector that they put on the moon reflects because of the design of it, it's designed to reflect back exactly where the beam came from. Which means it's got to be about 4,000 feet away from the building.
Remember we did it on that calculator, it was 2,200 feet away. And then you calculate that to miles, it's like 0.4 miles away.
Yeah, 0.4 miles, that's what I mean. That's where the return signal is going to come back if the laser reflector does exactly what they claim they do. They can't have the dish to pick the signal up on the return at the building.
Yeah, but it's in the same room.
Yes.
So how come they could claim a reflection from the moon using those reflectors came back exactly to where it started from? I mean, logically, it's sensible, but practically, in theory it works, in practice it doesn't.
Yeah, but you know what they claim? They claim it's because the observatory that's sending it out there is rotating. It's tracking the moon. The problem is the Earth is moving. The Earth's moving this way, and the observatory is going this way. So that's not going to work, is it?
No, it's not. It's not.
Well, you're going to have to calculate how far above the equator you are and the exact speed that the Earth is spinning at. Like you're approximately 1,000 miles an hour when you're at the equator.
Yeah.
So when you're above that, you're going to be lower than that. And then you have to work out the degree angle of the moon above the equator or below the equator when it's rotating around when you're doing it. And then you're going to have to, where you set that laser up, because you've got to build that building, but you're going to have to put the dish down exactly where it is. So if you're like 8 or 10 degrees above the equator and the moon is like 3 degrees below the equator when you're taking a shot at it, you're going to have to do all those calculations in there. to where to set the dish down. But the original, when they were just bouncing a signal off the moon before they had laser reflectors up there, they claimed that the laser would be 2 kilometers wide when it reached the moon and 35 kilometers wide when it comes back. But if this laser reflector is accurate and keeps the beam in track, then it's a very concentrated beam when it's coming back. That's what they claim.
Well, that's the difference between theory and practice again. In theory it works, in practice the theory doesn't.
Well, other than the fact that the laser reflector is going to just be covered in dust.
Yeah, of course
After the sun hits it, you get that photoelectric charge. That dust is going to go up in the air. It's going to come down. It's going to cover everything. Done.